Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Rebellious Wellness Lifestyle. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Gillian Goddard. And the reason we are here together is she's an endocrinologist. I'll tell you more about her in a second. But every time I do an episode that has anything to do with menopause or perimenopause, people get very excited. So I'm just going to keep having them because it seems like a lot of people have a lot of questions. And I think Dr. Goddard is one of the people that can help us get them answered. So thank you for being here. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's
Yeah,
my pleasure.
absolutely. So I will give the listeners a rundown. So you are an endocrinologist and you're also
Mhm.
an assistant professor at NYU Langone Hospital in New York City. You have 15 years of clinical experience, and I would say your expertise, your specialties are endocrinology related, thyroid, PCOS, and menopause, nutrition, weight loss, and diabetes. People may not think of those as endocrine issues, but certainly are hormones, which the endocrine system deals with, have a big role to play in anything that goes on in our body, which we're also going to talk about today. You have a newsletter called Hot Flash. I love the name of it. Just type in Hot Flash on Substack and you'll find it. So let's get down to the meat of the conversation. Let's start with what other hormones get affected during menopause and perimenopause? Because everybody thinks of estrogen, right? All we think about is estrogen. So there are a few more, though, right?
So many more, actually. I think what people don't realize is how many hormones they have running the show in their body. Sometimes people think of thyroid hormone. Certainly, that's one that
Hmm.
can get affected in perimenopause and menopause. But you also have cortisol, which is your stress hormone. You have other adrenal hormones other than cortisol, like aldosterone, which gets affected in perimenopause and menopause. And then parathyroid hormone is another one that people don't even know exists, and it is hugely important for bone health in perimenopause and menopause. And then there's all the hormones that are affected by or affect your metabolic function. So insulin and its partner glucagon, all the things that regulate blood sugar, blood pressure, they all get affected by this big shift that we see with perimenopause and menopause.
It's no wonder we feel rocked.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. I was just picturing a boat in a sea that is getting a little stormy. It's been a long time since I was in perimenopause, but I do remember.
It
Hard to forget.
it leaves its mark.
It sure does. It sure does. So, what would you say, because we often think about just estrogen, or like you said, maybe the thyroid, but the symptoms that we think of most. And I think what people want is a solution to the symptoms or a way to keep them at bay. So, what's your suggestion there?
Yeah, I do think that many of the changes that we see in our other hormones are estrogen related. And we talk about estrogen all the time. But what we're just starting to understand is that estrogen is only one hormone that shifts in the years with perimenopause. And that the hormone that drives the estrogen production, which is follicle stimulating hormone, which is made in the pituitary gland, its whole role in, like, the whole reason it exists is to get our ovaries to mature an egg and ovulate. And so when there's no eggs left, it's not in on that secret. FSH levels can be very high in perimenopause and menopause, and we're just starting to understand that that probably has implications as important as the drop in estrogen.
Well,
And that is why giving someone hormone therapy, which is typically estrogen plus or minus progesterone, doesn't get at all of the problems that are and all of the symptoms that are associated with perimenopause and menopause. But this is an area that's under active research. It's an area that we're just barely starting to understand. And so I think certainly hormone therapy can be very helpful for symptom management, but you also have to think a little bit more broadly, particularly about the metabolic changes that so many women experience. They have high blood pressure for the first time in their lives, which is probably FSH related.
interesting.
Yeah, the weight gain that so many women experience in perimenopause and menopause may also be FSH related, at least in part. And so right now we don't have one quick fix
Mm.
for all of those symptoms. We have to chip away at them one at a time, which can, I think, feels a little overwhelming and can be a little frustrating.
Especially because there are endless, thankfully, amounts of new research, new data online about menopause. It's finally getting its due. And
Finally.
yeah, but so many other things. The question of nutrition, what's the best diet, there's always two sides to the story, and there are probably 2,500 in between that story. There isn't one answer, but where do we go for that information that's going to help me right now? Because I don't have these symptoms, but I have these symptoms. And like you said, I think
Yeah.
it's a chipping away approach, but that's not easy for a person who is, you get thrown into it. God forbid you have a hysterectomy and they take your ovaries and you're really in it overnight.
Mhm.
That's why I like to have conversations with you. You're grounded in science, you're a doctor, you work with patients every day, you see the effect of what your work can do. So, people listening, if you are in that place of where do I begin? What do I do? This is a great place to start. Dr. Goddard's Substack newsletter, Hot Flash, has a
Thank
lot
you.
of great information.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that I just mentioned, conversations. Let's just say you don't have a doc who specializes in perimenopause. How would you counsel somebody, a patient who wants to get some help but hasn't really ever had this conversation with her GP or needs to find somebody else?
Yeah, so I think the first place you can start is with your GP. And I think you can start by feeling out their comfort level. One of the issues that I think a lot of people are finally talking about is that in addition to there not being a lot of information until recently about perimenopause and menopause accessible to patients, doctors have not been
Mm.
always been trained to treat the symptoms of perimenopause and menopause. Endocrinologists are actually uniquely positioned there because there are many aspects of perimenopause and menopause that fall squarely in our area of expertise, including bone health and metabolic issues like diabetes and weight management. But we also get some training because we are responsible for treating women who go through premature or early menopause, or what we used to call premature menopause, that we now call premature ovarian insufficiency.
Mm.
And so we do actually get a little bit of training. The challenge is, as much as I'd love to see everybody, there are 9,000 practicing endocrinologists in the entire country, and there's 168 million women. And some of those endocrinologists, like you mentioned, are people who maybe the female hormone system was not their particular area of interest. And so they're very focused on thyroid or
Mhm.
diabetes or some of these more traditional endocrine things. But I do think you can start with a conversation with your GP. And I think that there is a couple of ways that you can approach your doctor to have a productive conversation, even if you think maybe that your doctor isn't the most up to date on menopause and perimenopause. I think getting curious is always a great way to start conversations with people where you want to get some information. Even a question like, what is your take on hormone therapy? Or what is your take on the GLP-1 agonists that are the popular weight loss medicines? That can be a great place to start to just feel things
Mm.
out and see what your doctor's comfort level is. The one thing that patients often do with me that I actually often really appreciate is they'll ask if I saw a particular article or news
Mm.
report. And many times I have. I'm a fairly well-read person, but sometimes I haven't.
Yeah.
And if I haven't, I tell them I haven't. And I thank them for bringing it to my attention. And I do seek out the article and I circle back to them with my thoughts. And so I think asking your doctor if they've seen a particular article, a particular report, and if their response is no, I think that's okay because the volume of literature
Yeah.
coming out is no one could read every article out or every news report. But I think where they take it from there tells you all you need to know, which is, do they then ask for more information, seek the article out, and circle back with you about your questions? Or is that sort of, is the no the conversation ender?
Yeah.
And then, what you're left with is a decision. And I think that decision is the topic at hand. How critical is it to you? So if it's something big and broad like hormone therapy and your doctor shows that they're not comfortable with it, then I think you may be in a situation where you're going to be going to seek out someone who is. And we can talk about how to find those people. But if it's something that's small and you've got a great relationship with them, and then maybe it's not the most critical thing. But if it is something big and critical, it doesn't mean you have to throw the GP relationship out the window. There's
Right.
many things that they can still help you with.
Yeah.
They may just not be able to help you with your menopause symptoms
Hmm.
specifically. There, I think there's a lot more resources than there used to be. The Menopause Society is a great
Hmm.
resource for finding practitioners who are certified. And so basically, they've taken extra courses and training to learn to treat perimenopause and menopause. And so that's often a place that I recommend people start. I think in general, you find more and more that doctors who are comfortable with perimenopause and menopause and enjoy helping women manage their symptoms and feel great are saying so in their bios.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think that if you look at a doctor's bio and that's not the focus, then maybe that's not the right person. But there's lots of ways to get clues about a doctor's comfort level and a doctor's interest in a particular topic like menopause.
How about online practitioners? They seem to
Yeah,
be pretty prevalent these days.
they are. They are. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. One is COVID obviously revolutionized telehealth. It existed before COVID, but it was not what it is now. And now there's so many platforms that allow you to access doctors from wherever you are. And I also think it's because it is a way to signal to communicate that this is an area of your expertise if you're working in one of these platforms. Many of them are good. I think that there's a couple things to look for when you're choosing one. One is the pricing structure. So some of the pricing structures are like a membership and
Hmm.
it includes a lot of things. Oftentimes it includes things like you have to use their pharmacy and so you're paying out
Okay.
of pocket for the medications that they prescribe because you have to use their pharmacy to do it. But there are others like MIDI, for example, is one where it's a fee for service. And they take a lot of insurance.
That's a big, yeah.
That's a big one. And if you look for one where you are paying for the services as they're using them, that they accept many insurances, that's often a great way to help you make a choice. Many of them are staffed by nurse practitioners. They
Great.
can deliver excellent care. In some states, nurse practitioners can practice without the supervision of a doctor, but in most states, they are supervised by a doctor. And one of the questions I would always ask is, you should be able to see who that doctor is
Oh, yeah.
and what their credentials are in addition to the nurse practitioner who you're actually seeing. And I think that a lot of them, like MIDI, tells you exactly how they keep their practitioners up to date. So
Interesting.
they have a whole training program that the practitioners go through before they see patients. They have regular like continuing education that their practitioners are required to participate in. And so you can really get a sense of
Mm.
what kind of experience your practitioner has. I would say the biggest downsides of online practices like that are one is if you need a physical exam, obviously,
Yeah.
you're not going to get one that
Not,
way.
not yet anyway.
Not yet, maybe someday. And they can be a little one size fits all. This
Mm.
is the program that we put people through. And so if you need a little bit more TLC or you need something that's like the off the shelf hormone therapy doesn't work for you for some reason, or you have some special considerations, they may not be the best choice. And then I think the other thing just to be aware of is that they tend to experience more turnover than traditional medical practices
Oh, do
do.
they? Interesting.
Yeah, and so you may not be able to see the same person with reliability. In some cases that might be okay with you. I feel like some brick and mortar practices are the same way in some ways.
Mm.
It's very much a team approach and you see whoever's available. And so for some people that might be just fine. But you have to gauge your own comfort level with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So you slipped in something before that I know is a burning topic of conversation for people these days, and that is the GLP-1 agonist. And I'm going to put the context around this question because I know people have read so much about them. They probably all know there are some side effects. They're hard to get. They're easy to get. You can get them online. You can't. But what I'm wondering is, from our hormone levels fluctuating the way they do, are these a good thing to introduce for the weight loss piece, which of course is going to help with diabetes and heart disease, possibly? Or are these just going to throw more turmoil into it?
What I would say is you have to remember that GLP-1 receptor agonist is an analog of a hormone. And I think that's something that people don't often realize. GLP-1 is a hormone that we all have in our bodies. It's not one of the ones that people are always have been so aware of until recently, but it's always been there. And our hormone levels are affected by perimenopause and menopause. And adding an analog of a hormone can have effects that we don't fully understand. What we know about GLP-1 is that it affects how quickly food moves through your gut, from your mouth all the way to your anus. And more importantly, and the reason they were developed for diabetes, is they actually change how effective your body, how effective insulin is.
Okay.
And that's why they work for diabetes. It actually is probably why they work for weight loss too. But there's GLP-1 receptors throughout our whole body, not just related to how we metabolize and use insulin, and not just related to how food moves through the gut. And many of the areas where there are GLP-1 agonists, we don't fully understand or GLP-1 receptors, we don't fully understand what they're doing there. There's GLP-1 receptors all over our brain, and not just in our hypothalamus where we have hunger and thirst. And so you just want to be thoughtful about introducing a new hormone. That does not mean that they aren't very effective in many cases, and that for some people they won't be a fantastic choice. Because usually when we see people who really are struggling, the benefits of the medication far outweigh the risks. The question is, if you aren't really struggling, does the benefit of introducing a hormone that we don't fully understand exactly what it's doing or how it's working, is the benefit for you going to outweigh the risk? It can change how you're metabolizing other hormones that you're taking. So we know the best data we have for this is in birth control pills, which I appreciate is not this audience's concern. But hormone therapy, for example, particularly oral hormone therapy, may be affected just the way birth control pills are affected by these medications. So it could make anything that you take orally as a hormone, it may make it less effective, or it may change how your body absorbs it. Mostly at this point, that's progesterone that we give orally. And a lot of women take progesterone at bedtime because it can be helpful with sleep. But if you're taking it at bedtime and it's not actually hitting your bloodstream until the middle of the night, it may mess around with some of the other things that you're doing to treat symptoms for your menopause and perimenopause symptoms. Just something to be aware of.
That's why I was asking that way, because I know it's a hormone, so I was curious.
It is indeed.
They all talk to one another, regardless of what.
They do. They do. They all talk to one another. They turn each other on and off in ways, oftentimes, that we don't completely understand. The endocrine system is endlessly complex.
I'll bet it is. Is there a natural Ozempic type thing? I hear that on TikTok, it's like everybody's talking about, I don't know whether it's grapefruits or some kind of, I don't know what it is, but what's going on with the natural world?
So there are a number of different chemicals that are classified as supplements for the most part that come often from plants, that can act a little bit like a GLP-1 agonist. Berberine is one that people talk about a lot. It improves insulin sensitivity the way that a GLP-1 agonist does, although it's not nearly as strong.
Right.
So that's one that people talk about a lot. Inositol is one that people talk about a lot. It's like a B vitamin that improves insulin sensitivity. And both berberine and inositol have been studied and have been shown to have some effects, but compared to what you're going to get in an injectable GLP-1 agonist, they're going to pale in
Hmm.
comparison to that. The other one that I think is interesting is allulose.
Is that a
Allulose,
sweetener?
it is a
I
sweetener.
got that ose at the end too.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's a sweetener. It's like stevia in that it's a plant derivative that is just happens to be much, much sweeter than sugar. And so you get the sweetness without the calories. So
Mhm.
it's a artificial, it's a plant-based sweetener that is low in calories. There are studies in rats primarily where if you feed the rats a diet that's high in allulose, they will see some of the same effects that we see with GLP-1 receptor agonists. And what they have found is that the allulose actually raises the body's own GLP-1, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
But I would say to not don't like get too excited yet. There's a few issues. One is we're not rats, and none of these studies are in humans, and so be aware of that. Two is the way that they did these studies is that they sweetened the rats' water with the sweetener, and
Mm.
they were taking like per kilogram of body weight, they were taking huge amounts of allulose. And it'd be like if you filled your cup up with water and made it super, super sweet with the allulose and then drank it all day long.
Oh,
And so that's how they were giving it to the rats. You would have to use, so like the brand Wholesome sells allulose
yeah.
sweetener in a bag.
Yeah, the Ziploc
You can get
bag.
it at Whole Foods or whatever. And the bag wouldn't even last you 3 days if you were taking the same
Oh,
doses that the
wow.
rats take. Yeah.
Okay,
It would only
so back
last
to
you
the
like 2 days.
drawing.
Yeah. The other thing, the reason is because the GLP-1 our bodies make lasts for minutes.
Mm,
These GLP-1 agonists have been one of the things that's been done to the molecules is to change them so that they last for, in some cases, a week. But the GLP-1 our body makes only lasts for a couple minutes. So to keep the levels up, you would have
uh-huh.
to be constantly stimulating um,
Right.
their release. So not
Interesting.
ready for prime time.
Okay, peeps, no supplements with allulose stuffed into them. One thing I thought of, because I was looking at your newsletter earlier, is some women are given birth control like pills during perimenopause. What is, why?
Yeah. So for a couple of reasons. There's a couple of reasons why birth control pills can be a great way to regulate periods when women are having really long, heavy periods
Mm,
during perimenopause, which can be a problem for some women during the perimenopausal years. You do still need contraception during
sure.
perimenopause, which I think people get into their middle and later 40s and they think that they can't get pregnant, but as long as there's an egg left to ovulate, you can get pregnant. And I think the data is that about 40% of women have their very last period is an ovulatory cycle, which means that they ovulated before that period. I have a patient who got pregnant at 47 and has a lovely 7-year-old now as a result of that pregnancy. So there's that. But what it's doing from a perimenopausal point of view is it's doing the same thing hormone therapy is doing. It's giving you a stable dose of estrogen and progesterone every single day. It's keeping you from having the big rises and falls in estrogen and progesterone that provoke so many women's symptoms during the perimenopausal years. And so, in addition to preventing some of the heavy, irregular bleeding that many women can get during perimenopause, it's acting like hormone therapy. And now we used to think that birth control pills weren't safe in women over the age of 35. We worried about blood clots. That data comes from the early birth control pills that had about 5 times the estrogen in them that some of
Wow.
the lowest dose birth control pills have today.
Mm,
Plus, women were much more likely to be smokers in the early days of the birth control
mm,
pills in the 60s. And we know that's a risk factor for blood clots. And so now we know that they're safe and we have these ultra low dose pills that have just a small amount of estrogen They're actually closer in dose to some of the oral hormone replacement therapy that's out there.
Mm.
So, which does still exist, even though we mostly don't, though it's not necessarily everybody's first choice anymore.
Antidepressants, not an endocrinologist's wheelhouse necessarily, although I'm sure that you are capable of suggesting those to patients. They're
Certainly.
also given for people that are in that fluctuation, feeling down or feeling erratic. Is that a good transition alternative for somebody who doesn't want to do any HRT?
There are some good benefits to both SSRIs, so that's Zoloft and
Lexapro?
Prozac and Lexapro, and SNRIs, so
I
that's
don't know what that is.
like Effexor.
Oh,
And actually, the SNRIs have more data for perimenopausal symptoms than the SSRIs
and
do.
what's the N?
But norepinephrine.
Okay.
So it's serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake
Okay.
inhibitors. And they are actually quite well studied. And for a long time, they were the only non-hormonal option that we had for managing perimenopausal symptoms. They are again affecting hormones. Both serotonin and norepinephrine
Right.
are hormones. They just happen to be hormones that impact our mood. And actually, there's some data that SSRIs and SNRIs may also help with traditional non-mood related symptoms like hot flushes and night sweats.
Oh, interesting.
They don't work for everyone, but there are some new kids on the block now that are non-hormonal options, and they're super interesting. So there's one on the market and there's one about to be on the market. They say the pharmaceutical company is Bayer. They say August, so we'll see if they meet that timeline. But the one on the market is called Veoza, and it acts like estrogen at a very specific receptor in the brain but it really mostly works for hot flushes and night sweats.
Okay.
What's going to be really interesting is the Bayer product that doesn't have a brand name yet that should be coming out during the second half of this year. It hits two receptors. So it hits the hot flushes and night sweats, but it hits a second receptor that we think is really important for mood and sleep in the perimenopausal
Wow.
and menopausal years. And so it's a not will be a new non-hormonal option that may even be better for the mood changes that happen in the perimenopausal and menopausal years and is not a great non-hormonal option. So one of the things that's great about how much this conversation has exploded is that the people are seeing that there's a market. And so it's worth their time.
That drives the new products.
It sure does. It's worth their time to develop new products for people, and half the population will go through menopause at some point, some way, somehow.
I want to study those people, those women who do not get any symptoms. They just fly through, like my girlfriend's mother, like she said, I don't even know whether my mother had menopause. She would have had menopause, right?
She did have it. It's a
Had it,
guarantee.
and but I've met so many people that said I didn't have a thing. I just were one, no periods, no nothing.
It's so crazy because I often have people ask me when I'm speaking or on podcasts, like, what am I in for? What do I need to brace myself for? And I think that one of the things that hasn't come out is that the experience that women have during perimenopause and menopause is hugely variable.
Yes.
Um, and we don't understand why. We don't understand why some of those women sail through like nothing, and some women are deeply affected by it. And I know, can you imagine if you could bottle that lady who's like
Now there's something to bring to market. I was wondering now if it's related to, in any way, how women go through labor and delivery. I know a girl, she was 49, my friend was 49 when she gave birth to this child. She was in Manhattan, she worked at Carnegie Hall. She was on her way. The doctor said, you need to stop working at 7 months. She's like, whatever. Nine, broke water on the street, got on the subway, went to Carnegie Hall, realized she should probably go, got to the hospital and delivered a child. Like that was the whole process. And I've heard lots of people have easy ones. Then there is my other friend who was in labor for 24 hours, and then the baby's in distress, and then there's a C-section. I wonder if there's some relationship, inverse relationship to these women who suffer a lot during labor and the ones that have it easy go through no menopause? I don't know. I don't remember talking to my girlfriend who had that easy labor. I don't remember talking to her about her menopause.
So my N of one would be my grandmother,
Yeah.
who she's now deceased, but in her life was one of those people who was gonna just power through. My dad was her fourth child, and they got to the hospital, and he was born before my grandfather had finished filling out the paperwork to check her in. And when you asked her about menopause when she was alive, she would say she barely remembered it. So maybe there's something to
Maybe
this
there
theory.
is. Anybody listening who wants to dig into that and write a book, I'll buy it. That's just, yeah, the body is so interesting. And when you say that it's also variable, depending on who we are and what
So
genetics,
true.
environment, lifestyle habits, all those things.
Yeah. Yeah,
Very, very
absolutely.
different. So how much, let's talk about lifestyle real quick. What do you
Yeah.
think is, you can't make a blanket recommendation, but I'm just saying how much of how are affected is lifestyle related in your practice?
So when I talk about lifestyle, I actually use my grandmother as an example. She lived to be 99 and she was in incredibly good health until the last couple of years of her life. And I always say she didn't follow any of the conventional advice. By today's standards, I don't think she ever exercised a day in her life, but she was a big moderator. She enjoyed eating, but she would give herself the little scoop of ice cream in the bowl and eat the little scoop and not the whole carton.
Right.
She and my grandfather used to have a cocktail before dinner every single night, but they had one and
Mhm.
they never had another one. She didn't smoke, actually, which was
That
unusual at
was,
the
yeah.
time. And she completely surrounded herself with friends and family who she loved. She was very social and very socially connected. And there's lots of data on that
Yes, there
and
is.
how that affects aging. And she used her brain until the end. She didn't retire until she was in her 80s. She read
Wow.
the paper cover to cover. And so I think there's a lot of things there that she did. She was moderate in her indulging. She used her brain every single day in a way that was challenging to her. She surrounded herself with great, strong social connections with her family and friends. And the other thing she did is she never believed she was old.
I like that part.
And there's some data on that too,
Is there? I
actually,
haven't heard that.
that if you just don't believe you're old, you don't experience the same symptoms of aging. Now, this could be a little bit of a chicken and egg thing, right? Like people who are less symptomatic don't believe they're old and so
Right,
forth. But
right.
I think there's a lot to take though from that. There's no one diet that has been shown to be the diet, but a diet that is low in processed carbohydrates, high in plants and complex carbohydrates, lean proteins is going to serve you well. I would add some exercise to grandma's routine.
I would add the scoop of ice cream to your routine that you just mentioned.
Well, fair enough. Remember just the one though.
That's one. I always call it excess in moderation.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And exercise, moving your body. It doesn't have to be in a gym. I actually hate the gym. I prefer to get my exercise outside, which is why even in the middle of this heat wave that we're having in the Northeast right now, I was
Mhm.
out this morning getting some strength training because it's so important for your bones. And surrounding yourself with great people because that I think is a huge factor in how people experience the later part of their lives. And remember, we want menopause to be as long as possible.
Yes, we do. Just move on in and stay with me for the next couple of decades. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, for sure. This has been really informative and interesting and fun, and I thank you again, Dr. Goddard. And let's just tell people that the actual Substack address for your Hot Flash newsletter is savvypatient.substack.com. And if somebody wanted to look into working with you, who happens to be in the maybe tri-state area, how would they do that?
Yeah, my practice is called Park Avenue Endocrinology, and we're on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And so you can reach out and schedule an appointment. Be
That would
happy to
be,
see you.
yeah, I think that would be wonderful because having a trusted knowledgeable about women's stuff, professional in our lives. And again, we could have a GP and you. We
That's
could
right.
have, people are going to get tired of me
Absolutely.
saying this. It still takes a village even at this age. We need
Yep.
lots of different professionals in our lives for certain things that come up.
A
So,
hundred percent.
yeah. So thanks again for your time. And I really love this conversation.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome, people. I'll be back next week with another fabulous guest. Be well till then.